As a landlord, it's very common that you need to collect a security deposit or last month's rent. Schedule My Rent makes it really easy to collect, track, and release these deposits and prepaid rent back into your tenant's ledger. Let me show you an example. This is a brand new lease for Joe Smith that was just entered. Let's say we want to collect a security deposit. The first thing we do is we click this button that says Add Deposit or Prepaid Rent. I'm going to enter in the date that the security deposit is due. Let's say it's due on the 1st, and let's say the security deposit is going to be $1,000. I'm going to enter a description of security. And right here, when you enter this, you're able to select whether you're entering a deposit or prepaid rent. Schedule My Rent tracks each of these separately and can deposit into different bank accounts for each one of them if you would like. I'm going to leave this checked here so tenants is going to be notified that there's a request for them to add a security deposit. I'm going to click Add. So you can see here now that security deposit has been added for $1,000 and $1,000 is currently due. If a tenant logs into their portal, they'll see that they need to pay that $1,000 security deposit. Up at the top here, you can see that deposit due is $1,000 and the balance of the deposit is currently zero because the tenant hasn't paid for it yet. Typically, the tenant is going to pay through the system and everything will automatically post when the tenant makes a payment. In this example, I'm going to say that the tenant walks in and gives me a check for $1,000 instead of directly paying through the system. If the tenant pays me directly, I click the button here on the right that says Tenant Pays You Directly. What I'm going to do is I'm going to enter in the date that the tenant made the payment, who paid. I'm going to say the tenant paid the full $1,000, and I'm going to say they paid by check 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm going to leave this checked so the tenant automatically gets a receipt about the payment. Then I'm going to click Add Payment. Now you can see that there was a $1,000 security deposit and there was a payment for $1,000, so the running total now is zero. So the tenant does not owe anything currently. Also up at the top, you can see now the deposit balance is $1,000. The prepaid rent balance is zero because we haven't added any prepaid rent or requested that to be paid. There's also a release button, so you can release that balance that you're holding back into the tenant's ledger at any point in time. You would typically keep that deposit throughout the term of the lease until the tenant moves out. In this example, let's say the tenant moves out and then you go and you do a walkout inspection and you find that there's a little bit of damage and cleaning to be done and it costs $300. What I'm going to do here is there's a button here that says Add Fee or Rent. I'm going to go ahead and click that, and I'm going to enter in the date that is due. So let's say it's $300 and the tenant owes because of damage and cleaning. I'm going to leave that as a fee. I'm going to leave this checked so the tenant is automatically notified that they need to pay this damage and cleaning fee for $300. And I'm going to go ahead and click Add. You can see now another line has been added, damage and cleaning for $300, and the tenant owes the $300. In this example, the tenant is moving out, so the tenant is not going to potentially give you another check for that. It's probably going to be covered by the deposit that was already on the account. So what I'm going to do is, up at the top here, since we're already holding $1,000, I'm going to click Release, which will release that money back to the tenant's ledger. I click Release. In this case, I'm going to go ahead and release the full $1,000. You can put in a smaller amount if you want to hold back some of that money and keep it longer. So here I'm going to say that the tenant is moving out. I'm going to go ahead and keep it checkmarked so the tenant gets notification. And I'm going to go ahead and release that money. So you can see at the top, the balance that we were holding, that $1,000, is now gone. And you can see that $1,000 is now at the bottom here. So we posted $1,000, 300 of it got used for the damage and cleaning, which resulted in the tenant now has a credit of $700 on their account. So you can see it here down at the bottom. You can also see it here in the summary that the tenant has a balance of $700 because they moved out and they had a $1,000 security deposit. So let's go ahead and refund the tenant. So as a landlord, I'm going to write a check to that tenant to pay them back out of the appropriate account. And to do the proper accounting here, I'm going to go ahead and click the button that says Refund Tenant. So on Refund Tenant, it's going to say who I refunded, how much I'm going to refund. In this case, I'm going to go ahead and refund the full $700. If you needed to refund a smaller amount and hold it back for a period of time, you can do that as well. And once again, I'm going to say the tenant is moving out. I'm going to go ahead and leave this checked so the tenant gets a receipt about this transaction. And I'm going to go ahead and click Add Refund. So here now you can see that there's no balance due or credit balance anymore. So if we walk through this, you can see that there was initially a $1,000 security deposit that we requested. The tenant paid for it. When the tenant was leaving, we decided to post a $300 damage and cleaning fee. We went ahead and released that $1,000 deposit, which resulted in a $700 credit to the tenant. And then we went ahead and refunded that, and it brings everything back to zero. Another point I want to make is when you collect a deposit or a prepaid rent, you can select which bank account that those funds go into. So you can have a different bank account for rent, a different bank account for your deposit, and a third bank account you can select for prepaid rent. Some states have laws that require you put money in certain bank accounts, and we support that. Schedule My Rent makes it easy to request security deposits, prepaid rent, to track it through the life of a lease, and to release it back to the tenant. Thank you.